Keep Pine Street quiet.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
We already did the appointments, Selectmen report and mail. Mr. Vice Chair.
I just wanted to speak on the override. I was kind of on the fence, and I let my feelings known about this. And I have to say that after weighing the override and the way it's split, that I'm in favor of the override question this time. But I want to reiterate the caution that I stated before, that in the subsequent years, that we, if this passes, that we have to honor the spirit in which the voters pass it, and that is to fund the government side departments as they are in this override, and not turn around next year and lose a percentage of it to the school department just because of the arbitrary 70-30 split.
Right.
That anything above, that's involved in this override should stay split the way it is.
Which is roughly 50-50.
Right, and then anything beyond that, we can revert to the usual split.
Okay.
But I think we have to maintain the services that we're promising the people to vote for this override, so we can make services available to Council on Aging, to have the policemen, to have the Charlie Fire Station. And I don't want it to be a one-shot deal and then have that funding taken over by the other department in subsequent years.
Totally agree.
So I support it with the fact that, the knowledge that my fellow members of the Board of Selectmen and the town manager will work in subsequent years to protect that funding as the voters may deem appropriate. And I've seen a lot of people that I know for, a lot of people that I know against, and I respect all their views, just like I hope they'll respect mine. And that I know when Mr. Stefanelli was in here rebutting, a meeting two meetings ago, or, and he mentioned how we defeated it last time. And to me, it was a totally different override question.
Right.
Because I too, on that vote, voted to defeat it. Because I was not for it, because I didn't believe that override was fiscally responsible for the entire town. Where I think the work that you and Mary have done, along with the other, and Mr. Units, along with the representatives from the school department and the finance committee, to make it a well-rounded financial picture to take care of the town and not take care of one side of the town,
Right.
has been well worth it. And I want to thank you all, and I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Mr. Steele?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple things. One, what is the process? How do we protect that funding? Because I do agree with everything that Brad just said. After the first year, is it, I mean, you as basically the CFO, are you the one that drives that budget? Is the FinCom?
Well,
It's a valid concern, especially since the amount, it's a 50-50 split going into it.
it would be my budget that I present to the Finance Committee, and then it's up to the Finance Committee to agree to vote that way, and then ultimately it's up to town meeting.
Okay.
And town meeting is the one that makes the final say.
I would, so further to that, one, I think we got a lot of work done this year, and I feel that the group that we were working with, the school, is in the same frame of mind with us. They were looking to make this an override that was in the best interest of the whole town. So I would hope that, well, all I can say is I'm going to be the person to champion for that, because in my mind, this is the way it needs to be going forward, and I'd be very disappointed if we fought for an override that we sold to the town as being good for the whole town, and in a year was no longer. So I give you my word on that, Brad. And then the only other thing I want to say is I feel like Bob and I had an advantage because we were talking about the override for so long. We were looking at numbers. We were talking with Mike and Dr. Byetta. We were talking to the school committee. So for the past 10 months, we had a lot of time to look at the numbers, and in our minds, we really understood where we were going. And yourself and other members of this board and the school committee maybe didn't have that option to have as much information, although we did try to keep you updated. We were giving you the bullet points, basically. So what I want to say tonight is I really respect the fact that you took the time to look over everything that we did. I've always felt that you are definitely a voice of reason on this board, and I have to say it really makes me feel good that you were able to look at everything that we've done in the past 10 months and agree with us that this is in the best interest of the town. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And had you not, I have total respect for everybody on both sides of this vote. It wouldn't have been an issue, but you did make me feel good tonight in saying that.
And I think, again, being the reasonable, probably the only reasonable person on the board, with, beyond you. But I think what's important to stress is that, you know, a lot of us did not support the last attempt, and I've said a couple of times, I didn't support the last 2 or 3 attempts to do an override. And I think it's people like yourself that are sitting on that fence that continue to have an open mind and just not say yes and just not say no. They're looking at both sides and trying to figure out reasonably what makes sense. And sometimes I like to consider myself on that same fence post because I feel that sometimes you have to do what's in the best interest of the general public, you know, and your 50-50 concern is also my concern and will continue to be my concern as long as I sit here. But I wonder, Mr. Eunice, I know there are ways that we can establish policy as a board. Could we establish a policy after, let's say, we're premature now, but let's say it does go through. Could we establish a policy where we say, okay, in this particular override, we spent, you know, $2.2 million. It is our desire as part of our policy that this money only would continue to be 1.1 and 1.1, you know, and make a policy out of it. A financial policy. I'm not sure we can do that, but I would like to look into that after the election and after the town meeting, because if that money does go through, to Brad's concern and mine, and I believe Mary's too, we want to freeze this so that no matter what Board of Selectmen sit here, that we would have some kind of a policy in place to try to lock that in for a number of years. Not to say it'll always be that way. Town meeting can do anything they want to do. I get that. But if it's our policy to say, this is how we want it to go, and if it doesn't go that way, I'm not sure anyone has to adhere to our policy, but it should be our desire and policy to try to do it that way. And maybe we can look at that after, if it all goes through.
And I think that the fact that we're actually opening another building, that has to be sustained. It doesn't do us any good to open that building for 2 years and then shut
No.
it again, right? So
No.
if we're saying as a town, this is a public safety issue, and this is what we want as the best interest of the town, we've got to have a plan to make sure that that building stays open.
No, I agree. How many times has Shotley opened and closed?
I can't count that.
Well, you know, I was talking about it to somebody today. We were talking about the Charlie Fire Station. I remember when it was closed. I remember we opened it again, and then we closed it again. And then occasionally we open and close it, but it's not manned all the time. But the sad part, when you talk about living on a shoestring, we need to step one step back and look at Winnicott Fire Station. Winnicott Fire Station, when I first became a selectman, was manned. We had people down there. Over the years, we couldn't man it anymore. We did nothing to improve it, maintain it, do anything to that building. It came crumbling down. We knocked the building down. We actually lost the fire station because financially we could not take care of it. Not only personnel-wise, but, you know, capital-wise. We couldn't take care of the building. Shame on us. We allowed that to happen. And when you look at the Charlie Station, it's on the same path or the same trail as Winnicott. And before I moved here, I know there was a number of small satellite fire stations all over town. And the intent of this one here, built in the center, was to kind of replace some of those. I understand what the process was, but You know, when you think about Winnicott, especially now with a bridge out in between us, you think about that, the importance of having a facility out there, and then going to the west side of town and looking at Chartley, you understand that how important it is to have that type of, personnel and safety in our neighborhoods. So, again, if this does not pass, the Chartley Fire Station is going to continue to decay. We're not going to have the funding in place to do anything about it. It's only a matter of time before we're looking at that saying, okay, what are we going to do with this? Are we going to knock it down and build a new one? Or build it in a different location? Or what are we going to do? You know, and I think, you know, as a town, we have an obligation to try to maintain what we have, if nothing else. And we should be ashamed of ourselves that we allowed the Winnicott Station to go in such disrepair that we had to knock it down. I mean, the roof was caving in, and in hindsight, it's kind of embarrassing when you think about it. So, but hopefully we'll move on. Mrs. Steele?
You know, it's every override it comes up with. We talk about the number of men that we have on our public safety and departments, and you know, I know that we all like the little town that Norton is, but it's not. I mean, when you look at where we are, situated in between two major highways, we've got a major college in town. We get all of the overflow problems coming out of the Comcast Center at our expense, and we get none of the revenue out of it. And how many times in the past year has our public safety been called to 495 for serious accidents? And we've got our manpower on 495 and we have an accident on the Attleboro line or a fire or a medical emergency. We're not ensuring the safety of the residents in this town just because of the way we've grown. We're a big town and we've got a lot of issues that a lot of towns our size don't face just because of the way we're situated. So for me, this override really is about the safety and welfare of the residents of the town. And I hope people can look at what we're asking to do and realize that we're not asking to go overboard. We're just asking for the basics to protect the town and bring the school to a level that it needs to be.
And I know it was brought up again last night about, okay, so you can override this year, next year, coming back for another one. And I've publicly stated a number of times, when we looked at this, we analyzed all these numbers, it's not enough. I'll tell you right now, we should be asking for more, but we've been very prudent about it. We've said, okay, what is important to the town to make this work? Could we do more? Could we have other programs? Yeah, there's a lot of things we could do, but we're not asking to do that. We're just trying to maintain and put back some of the services that we've had in the past. And the question keeps coming up, well, if you get this one, you're going to be back again for another one next year, the year after. That's not the truth. The truth of the matter is, we analyzed this information to the town manager and the superintendent and said, look, if we can get this one-time adjustment in the budget, we feel we can continue to maintain services for at least the next 5 years, unless something catastrophic comes up along the way. I mean, you never know, but, you know, the plan is that we should be able, this should handle us for the next few years, 5 years or more, and not have to worry about making any further adjustments. We haven't made any adjustments in our budget since 1981. You know, the idea behind Prop 2.5 was to cap it, but to allow people the opportunity, if they wanted to, override that amount of money to improve services or whatever purposes it might be. We've never done that. And, you know, and when you look in hindsight, you say to yourself, and, you know, I was just moved to town when this all came about, and I wasn't involved, but the question should be asked is, where were we at the starting point? Were we the small conservative town of Norton, which we are, from the very beginning, squeezing every penny we had, and suddenly we're saying, okay, that's what you're going to start with, and now you keep adding 2.5% to that. And over the years, we never caught up. And I can show you town reports from the days, my finance committee days, we're talking about the same stuff today. We're talking 1987. We're still having the same conversations. And it's been going on for years and years and years. Every year we're having the same conversations. So we'll see how this all turns out and see what happens. Brad.
If I may, when you were talking about history, basically, we were at the point in the early 90s of having to talk about closing the LG North School. And the only thing that saved us was education reform.
Right.
And now education reform, because of the way the town has grown, we've been reclassified, so our reimbursements from the state are dropping. And just to maintain the funds, the state expects us to chip in more.
Right.
And it's not, the money's gotta come from someplace.
Right.
And it's not like, it's this giant windfall. It's to make up for what the state is not going to send to us, because according to them, we're so affluent.
Right.
We went from a farming town to now this affluent suburban town, which I don't see it in my household, but then I guess I'm not typical.
And again, the health insurance costs have continued to
Skyrocket.
skyrocket. Special education costs for the town of Norton have continued to skyrocket. Things we have no control over. I mean, we have some because we had a town manager who worked very hard to get us into a program where we were able to save some money every year in a co-op type of program. We've had town employees give up some of their benefits to help us with that, but it's still spiraling northward. It's going up and up and up and up, and there's no way to control it. There really isn't. Mr. Steele?
Mr. Chairman, I'm totally in agreement with what you and Brad said about the 5-year plan and everything. And, really, yes, I'm supporting this override. Do I have an appetite to go for an override every year? No, this is exhausting. It's exhausting to the town. It divides our town. It's not something that we want to continue to do. But in my mind, an override, which is extremely fiscally responsible, that we're asking the town to approve, that will set us forward, like you said, barring any serious, catastrophe, for the next 5 years. At the same time, we are working as volunteers in all departments in this town and as paid municipal employees to bring in other sources of revenue, and they're just starting to hit. When An Island starts in, when some of the business down in that park some of that revenue starts to come through, that's going to help our budget. Hopefully with the rezoning over on Leonard Street, that will help. The solar panels, $18 million over the next, how many years?
$6 million the next 20.
Oh, 6 million? Oh, 18 would have been nice, but I'll take 6.
We'll find another spot.
Yeah, there you go. But you know what? This isn't stuff that's just happening overnight. This is stuff that's been in the works, and that I believe will help to sustain us in the future, while this override in the short term will help us to get to the point where we need to be. And I feel like it's going to give us a little jump forward and get the momentum going in the right direction.
The one thing that was very clear to me last night was, and it was brought up a number of times, was programs like recreation. Well, go for donations. Find money. I have never, every time you turn around, there are people asking for something. And the small businesses in this town have been very, very generous for a very, very, very long time, including Wheaton College. And Wheaton was kind of bashed around a bit last night about, what they're doing for the community. And maybe between now and the next meeting, you can find out that one time they were number 3 taxpayer. And I believe they're still in the top 12. And the only reason they've gone down the list is because we, as a board, have built these huge factories, Horizon Beverage, and some of these other facilities that are now taken over as the main dominant taxpayers in town. Cisco, was there with Wheaton for a number of years, and now that's still there, for the most part. But, when you've got a whole bunch of volunteers, and that's what we all are, out trying to scrape up every nickel we can, we're doing that. But at some point, we have to take responsibility for what we want in the town and stop begging everyone else to help us do things that we should be doing ourselves. We should be paying for ourselves. And I think recreation is a perfect example of that. You've got a bunch of dedicated volunteers that are doing everything they can to keep that program going. And they are asking for money, and they are begging, and they're running benefits, and they're trying to do everything to make money. Just last weekend, they were doing the Easter egg hunt on the town common. That costs money, but they're raising the funds somehow to make that happen. for the best, in the best interest of the community. And I think it's a wonderful thing that they're doing. And in their frustration, they're saying, look, all we want is a professional, full-time person that can help us, because we're tired. And we're tired of trying to raise the cash and the money and be responsible for the Halloween parade, Founder's Day, the Easter egg hunt. They have a bunch of programs that they offer that we probably don't publicize enough. And I get their frustration, because the three of us sitting here as volunteers understand also how tough it is to do the job sometimes when you don't have what you need to do it. So, Mr. Eunice?
Nope, all set.
Well, you were going to say something.
No, I'm all set.
And I think in last night's forum, I think Representative Barrows got up and threw some numbers around that he had compiled that were really eye-openers. I sent you a copy of it today, Mike. You know, maybe you could take that information and kind of recap it again for us. And it was an evaluation of neighboring communities and how they've fared over the years, and you know, how many overrides they've had and that kind of stuff, you know, to make us aware of what we're trying to do, so. Okay. So where were we? You all done with your town manager report?
Yes, I think you were about to say,
We're gonna
because
do mail.
next week is a short week, you weren't going to have a meeting.
Okay, Selectmen report, mail. You have anything?
That was him.
That was it.
That was it?
It's long-winded. Jeez, Brad.
Mrs. Steele, you have anything?
No, thanks.
We did receive a letter from Boy Scouts of America, Troop 61. They have 5 young men who are reaching the rank of the highest award of the Boy Scouts, and that's the Eagle Scout rank. It's going to be held. It's going to be. Looks like it's going to be held on May 6th.
Yeah, this is Saturday.
Saturday, May 6th. There are 5 young men: Lucas John Aruda, Reese Antone Bodner, Grayson Scott Kelly, Ryan McFarland, and Christopher Smith have all reached the point where they're going to have a brief ceremony at St. Mary's to recognize these young men in their achievements here, not only in the town of Norton, but in other towns around us too. So it is an invitation. Yeah, which you have some certificates made up. We'll see if we can get someone to go. I mean, I know we're all kind of busy this time of year. We'll have to see if we're available. I know you're not available, Mr. Brownwell.
Now-
For some reason, I
now
think
that-
I have something coming up too.
Now that I actually have a calendar with me,
Yeah,
I found out that I have a wedding that day.
okay. But we'll,
So if we
if
can't
we
make it,
can't,
we'll send this.
we'll make sure the certificates get there. We can't make it ourselves. Okay. What else here? Do I have anything else? Nope, I think
There were
that's it.
2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm looking and see if I have any other things on the agenda. Okay. So under warrants and minutes, we have Mr. Ramo.
Yeah, I move to approve the biweekly payroll for the period ended April 8th, 2017. Warrant number 61 dated April 13th, 2017, in the amount of $1,208,706.67.
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any further discussion on warrant number 61? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
I move to approve bills warrant number 62 dated April 13th, 2017, in the amount of $434,507.94.
Second.
Motion is second on bills warrant number 62. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. We don't have any minutes this week. Next meeting on the agenda is to continue to discuss and to vote on the draft for the May 8, 2017 Spring Annual Town Meeting warrant articles. And if you have anything else you would like to bring up, just let Mr. Eunice know before the next meeting, and we will add it to the agenda. In the meantime, see if I can find this piece of paper here. I declare under Massachusetts General Law 30A, Section 21, subsection A3, that for the purpose of collective session will be discussed a strategy in respect to collective bargaining with union personnel and to conduct collective bargaining with non-union personnel. Because of discussion, strategy in open session could compromise the purpose of the executive session, and with the board not to return to open session at the conclusion of the open session.
I move that the board go into executive session under General Laws, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A3, for the purpose and reasons declared by the chairman, and that the board will not return to open session thereafter.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Steele? Mr. Bramwell?
Yes.
And I too will vote yes. Thanks, Shane. Thank you.